Hi, I'm Hanson.
I'm Raju Guatam, and our research project is about USS Vincennes. And we are in the two groups, me and Troy Hanson. Nobody in our group responded, so we two guys did it together. And let's talk about our project. It's the USS Vincennes incident. And let's talk about the overview. For the overview, I think Troy is going to talk about the overview. So next to it, Troy.
On July 3rd, 1988, the 290 passengers and crew of civilian Iran Air Flight 655 were killed. 2 radar missiles were launched from the USS Vincennes under the command of Captain Roger Will. Vincennes misidentified Airbus as an attacking Iranian Air Force F-14 aircraft.
This is the place where the attack happened, is nearby the Strait of Hormuz. Let's talk about the historical background about the USS Vincennes. We are not going to talk a lot about the historical background because this is related to history and this is our engineering class. So I'm going to give you the short summary about the history. Actually, there was a war between Iraq and Iran since 1981, and US was engaged in both countries protecting the foreign oil. And Iranian gunboats, they were attacking the neutral tankers as well as Iraqi. They also attacked USS Stark in May 1987, and that killed 37 Americans. Eventually, all of these, the circumstances, it led to the war, and that created, the big red alert for the USS Vincennes. And next slide is let's talk about timeline of the attack. On 1988 at 10:47 a.m. What was the date again? Let me look. It was on July 3rd, 1988 at 10:47 a.m. Iranian airline 655 appeared on the USS Vincennes radar as an unknown enemy approaching to the ship. And during 10:49 a.m. to 10:51 a.m., repeated warnings were given to the flight, but there was no any response. And at 10:51 a.m., Vincennes they hold fire, and confusion about whether the flight is ascending, coming down, or whether it was descending, going up, or it was coming down. They couldn't tell that. And also during 10:53 a.m., the final warning was given. And after this period, there was a total of 14 warning given, I guess. There was 14 warning given, but there was no any response. And finally, at 10:54 a.m., 2 of the missiles were launched. And this is the picture where the Vincennes radar were launched. And what actually went wrong? The US actually blamed Iran for letting the plane fly over the combat situation below. And United Vice President Bush explained that the Vincennes responded for the self-defense because the flight was failing to respond. Actually, there was 7 warnings, okay? And let's talk about the cause of failure, okay? This is the most important part because this is the part that led to the cause of the failure of engineering design, failure to respond, aggression, confusion, lack of information, Aegis weapon system deficiencies. We're going to talk about the Aegis weapon system deficiencies later on. Altitude, IFF, actually IFF means identification of friend or foe, and overconfidence. Let's talk about failure to respond. Actually, it is impossible to know what causes the Vincennes to launch the missiles, because the black box was never recovered, and it was also assumed that the pilot failed to monitor Vincennes distress frequency. And next one is aggression, confusion, and lack of information. The over-aggression of Captain Will Rogers, he was over-aggressed, and that also led to the war. And there is a 42 by 42 inch display called Aegis. It's called Aegis system in CIC. Actually, CIC means it's a dark room, where all of the crew members, the ship crew members, they sit there and they look over they communicate. They look over their satellite. And actually, the Aegis system in the CIC room, it had given a false data and information. And this is the picture of Captain Will Rogers. And Aegis weapon system deficiency. This is the most important cause that led to the tragedy. Okay, actually Aegis is the Navy combat system. Let's talk about what is in the Aegis system. And Aegis can track hundreds of missiles and airplanes for a number of ships. And Aegis system in CIC did not provide the actual view of the flight. It did not provide whether the flight was coming down or whether it was going up. And also the Aegis system, it did not tell whether the flight was a civilian flight or whether the flight was a military flight. It failed to identify the flight. And also there was some electronic distraction on the Aegis system. And this is the picture of the Aegis system. You see there is a 42 by 42 inch screen, and this is a dark room. All the crew members are sitting there and they are monitoring. And this is basically the diagram of how the Aegis system works. It consists of like a network, and Aegis this is the connection setup for the Aegis. And let's talk about altitude. Altitude also led to the to this IA 655 tragedy. Actually there was a confusion to read altitude from the Aegis system. Aegis system actually it does not support the altitude reading. It doesn't tell like whether the flight is coming down or whether it's going up and what height is going. It doesn't tell that. And also there was no enough space in the Aegis system to install that altitude display in the Aegis system. And this is basically just a chart. And the next cause is identification of friend or foe. The Aegis system, it determined the flight as IFF Mode 2, which means it is a military flight, rather than IFF Mode 3, which is a civilian flight. And there was also some user interface difficulties in there, because it is a bad design of the radar system. So the most important reason what led to the USS Vincennes tragedy, the Iranian 655 tragedy, was Aegis system. Aegis system, there was a lack of information, on the Aegis system.
In conclusion, the Aegis design was the main failure in what caused this catastrophe. The design should have included a better identification of friend or foe. It needs better testing. It should have been tested more before put out to actual use. The main problem with that was that it couldn't identify if there was a military or a civilian aircraft. So it needed proper identification before it was put into military use. The altitude is another thing that should have been added to the design. It wasn't really developed before put out, and that could have helped the situation if they knew which direction the aircraft was moving. The quality of training of the captain could also have been better. He could have handled the situation in a much more safe and professional, less aggressive manner. The radar system also could have been better designed. It could have used more system data and just more quality. The screen could have been more descriptive of what it did. It could have helped them understand how the plane was traveling. So all the designs should have been upgraded after a certain period of time, and they could have gotten better information and accuracy to help the situation.